empathy is her strongest skill, and her principles in life are to be trustworthy, care for other people, and give first. With her never-ending curiosity about how life and the universe work, Maya Zlatanova is making things better with a smile. So you can all see this really great smile. She's a health tech entrepreneur, clinical research expert with 15 years of global experience in clinical research regulations, patient recruitment, and engagement. So Maya, how such a highly regulated industry like clinical research could be changed? We can't hear you. Perfect.
Thank you very much for the warm introduction, Vilana, for the invitation. I'm really really glad to be among such amazing women and to be able to contribute with my know-how in one way or another. And yes, I decided to really speak about changing such a very heavily regulated industry, because I believe that from one industry in the other industry, you can learn a lot, and there are a lot of similarities. And I want to share the lessons that I learned in the hard way, so to say. So let me first share my slides with all of you. I prepared a couple of slides. Of course, first I want to go through why everything started for me. As I mentioned, and as you mentioned, I already have around 15 years of experience in the clinical research industry, but I have no clinical research background. Before that, no life sciences, nothing. So it's not coming from the education. I joined a couple of companies, actually one company that was producing software solutions for the clinical research industry, and I was a BD guy there. So I can't really say that I was so involved in the whole clinical research happening. And after that, I started my first company, which was more as a consultancy. We've been doing face-to-face training on regulations in the clinical research space. And again, I wasn't the one doing these trainings, but I was the one coordinating trainers and experts from all around the globe who were conducting these trainings and producing the content of online courses as well. But my real journey into the clinical research industry actually started in a very interesting way. Just give me a second. Yeah. So what you see here is actually a picture of me. I'm in the darker dress, and the girl next to me is my sister. And she is actually the reason why I got a lot more involved with the clinical research industry. Maybe 8 years ago, something like 8 years ago, she developed a very bad disease. I'm not going to mention about the disease. I'm not going to focus on that. But basically, her situation was such that there was no treatment on the market that can help her. There were recommendations. We went through everything. We did everything we could, but we still couldn't help her. And I was already working more or less with people involved with clinical trials. So very naturally, I started asking myself, okay, well, are there any clinical trials that can help my sister? And while I was doing this research, and while I was learning a lot about what it's like to be a patient in searching for clinical trials, I also learned a lot about the industry. I learned that this clinical research industry, for the sake of you understanding where I'm coming from, this is the only industry that we can be thankful to about all of the new treatments coming to the market, all of the new therapies, all of the new supplements, everything that we know about medicine and health is thanks to the clinical research industry. And I started learning things that, for example, that a new good treatment that really helps patients out there, for it to come to the market, it takes 10 years of research in clinical trials only. And I don't even mention the years in drug discovery, for example, or let's say testing in the laboratories. So I speak only in clinical trials, 10 years. And it's not 10 years because of the processes or any restrictions in the operations or regulations, because it's super hard to be able to manage all of the different variables of a clinical trial, and mainly each clinical trial, each therapy should be proved with real people, with people like you and me. And this term is called in the clinical research industry patient recruitment. And 50% of clinical trials, they get delayed because they cannot recruit enough patients to be a part of these clinical trials. And the worst part of it is not that patients don't want, but because of completely other reasons. And I'll mention a little bit more about them in a bit. So here I am, being in a patient's shoes, more like my sister's being a patient, but also coming with kind of industry understanding and understanding that the industry is definitely not efficient enough. And that's the only industry that we rely on new medicines. And I'm starting this company, Find a Cure, at the beginning just as a project. I had this really ideal belief that if we are to help patients, if we are to support patients to find, understand, and join clinical trials, we will influence also patient recruitment in one way or another. I was kind of naive, really, to believe that such a highly regulated industry, such a complicated industry, you can see the solution on the surface. And I really thought, okay, we will help patients, and that will contribute to industry. And actually, for a while, this has been working pretty well. We really learned a lot. And just to give you an idea of the types of results that we actually gathered, we managed, like since 2016, we managed to help more than 500,000 patients across the globe to search for clinical trials. And that's with a team of less than 10 people back then. We really got this domain experience. My co-founders, they're coming from software engineering experience, but they've been developing governmental clinical trial registers previously. But now we started being engaged with real patient recruitment projects, and we started understanding really what actually happens. And unfortunately, we found out that our initial idea of spreading awareness and just purely helping patients connect to the right clinical trials is actually not the solution for the industry. We found out that even though patients are really interested, because like for the ones that really don't understand it, like imagine you're a patient and you're either not happy with your existing treatment or there is no treatment for you. Your only other hope is a clinical trial. And there are thousands and thousands of people, as you can see from the numbers here, more than even expected. That's even done almost without any marketing budget. So imagine the level of people asking for information in clinical trials, but then realizing that the patient recruitment challenge has nothing to do with just the interest of patients, but it comes from the way clinical trials are being planned. And clinical trials are being planned very much away from the patients, away from their real needs, away from their realities, their journeys in their country-specific realities, so to say. And what we decided to do with my team is to kind of pivot into creating a platform that, again, is very closer to Find Me Cure and the initial platform helping patients, which we do even on a daily basis, even today. But then it will be much closer to the industry, where we combine like thousands of different data sources in order to predict patient recruitment. We used our technological background, but also our understanding for the patients, to combine this know-how, these data sources, and bring it all to one platform called TrialHub, which is an industry-dedicated platform helping predicting patient recruitment and identifying the best opportunities to engage with patients. And it's been a great, interesting journey. We've launched the platform last year. We're constantly learning, constantly evolving. And I feel like there is no single moment of time where we don't feel really intense onto the next milestone, the next milestone, the next milestone. And with the next couple of slides, actually, I want to focus more on what does it mean to innovate in a highly regulated industry such as the clinical research, because I want you to take these lessons learned from myself and maybe apply it to this industry, other industry. I believe this industry can be disrupted. We can bring innovation only if more people working towards the same goal. And why? I'll touch upon that now. The first thing that you need to be aware is that you need to really understand better what the dynamic between the different stakeholders in this in the industry. It might be obvious that you have one buyer, you one regulator, and then one company, for example, but almost always, almost certainly, when you have a lot of regulations, that's usually because you have a lot of stakeholders. The other very regulated industry that I can recall that's similar to the clinical research industry is the airline business, and they have very similar regulations, similar to this one. The difference, the big difference, in the end of the day, is that here we speak about the safety of people, and everything that people do, all the data that's out there, is to ensure the safety. And believe me, you can definitely rely on clinical trials, because we've reached a certain point where we can say that there is no risk for patients, or the risk is really minimal. And so for us, it really took us a lot of time to map this like structure. The structure is even more complicated than that, but that's like a simplified overview. And unless you really understand really good what's the dynamic between the different stakeholders, you can't produce a product that can fit even one stakeholder. So that's super critical in order to be able to innovate in a highly regulated industry. The other lesson that I've learned is that sometimes regulations are just excuses. Sometimes people and companies don't go in one direction or another, not just because like regulations are there and they have to comply with them, but sometimes regulations get translated in a way that it fits like someone's like interests, for example. For very long, for example, the pharmaceutical industry said we cannot communicate with patients because regulators forbid that. When you go and dive deeper into the regulations, you see that they don't say you can't communicate, but you just have to make sure that when you communicate with patients, there is no conflict of interest, and so on and so forth. And yes, safety should be first. So regulations are for safety, for everyone's being on the same page, but like not always, but sometimes these regulations are just used as excuses. So make sure you understand the basics of the regulations in this industry. The other thing is think globally, but act locally. Especially the clinical research industry. It's so super international, because for one drug to be approved even in one country, most likely it will go through 10 different countries and thousands of patients to test the new treatment. In order for them to say, yes, it's fully okay, it's safe, it's efficient, you can go to the larger market and sell your drug. It's international at one side, but on the other side, building a product that is from day one international, we did that mistake, believe me, and it's super big mistake because it's really hard to scale. I mean, there are a lot of things, business units, basically, that you need to understand prior to scaling globally. So I actually added here, find out your most accessible market segment, accessible in terms of technology, data that you have, Salesforce, for example. And here is I'm happy to share my slides. Here is a link where you can watch a short video about what is a beachhead market and how to actually identify such one. Then also it's super critical to identify your target persona, first one, and then how you expand, and also measure quick wins versus strategic moves. Sometimes you do, let's say you go to just one country, but then it's much better to go to 3 countries at the same time. So you always have to measure, you choose the quick wins or the strategic moves. And with the next one, that's something that I've learned in a very hard way. I thought I have the experience of the industry because I've been like working in industry. But then I realized very quickly that I don't have really domain experience. Yes, I'm kind of coming from the industry, but what I was doing was completely different than what I was doing previously. So, and at the same time, I realized that this gives me also strengths. So here I just summarize some of the strengths and some of the positives and negatives of having a domain background. So Obviously, if you're coming from the industry and working in the same field that you're currently innovating, you know the processes internally from inside out. And also, you know these people, you have your network already built. So you're just ready to go out and speak with these people. And most likely, you know their language to even more engage with them. But the negatives of the domain background is that you're kind of used to the status quo. For example, if you know that this company is using Excel files for doing this, like these estimations, maybe you're so used to that, you will never think of other ways of doing that, right? So you wouldn't be able to see the different angles of innovation. And then you will lack the experience from other industries. It's not always the case, but in most cases, in order to have a real good domain experience, that means you've spent like very good quality time in this position doing like this role, for example, and then you don't see what happens in other industries. My strength was that I really understood somehow the airline, like from like previous things that I've been doing, and both me and my co-founders, we had very good technological background, so we were able to see the impossible things for other people coming from the from the industry. And as last, really, is be persistent. I think that Galia mentioned in her presentation as well. It's not a straight road. You go here, you go there, you fix things, you feel disappointed, you feel very happy. But if there, I really like what Wright Hoffman said, so I'm going to read it aloud. As the startup and every young company is like jumping off a cliff and building a plane on the way down. You just hope that you are going to build this plane before you crash, basically. That's what we're doing. It's super complicated. So finding the way to always keep yourself motivated and fresh and having this mission, knowing why you're doing these things is super critical. And yeah, that's really about my journey. Obviously, there are a lot of things to be shared, but if you have questions, you can always find me on LinkedIn as well.
Thank you so much. It is always a pleasure listening to you. And these days, health is really important. But do you have a statistic? How many people you have managed to help all those years you doing this?
So as I said, we don't have a strict statistic how many people we actually managed to help. It's between 10 and 20% of these 500,000 people that I mentioned.
Yeah, all right.
But I believe that we helped even these 500,000 people because the essence of the whole idea behind finding cure is not make you be a part of a clinical trial, but be able to easily identify a clinical trial if even there are any. Find out what in research, find out if that's relevant for you, and only then to decide, yes, let's do that because I think that's an option for myself. So all these 500,000 people that searched on Find Me Cure for clinical trials as an alternative, they found out at least what's being in research and they can benefit from that or not.
So how exactly is it work? I am looking for a medical treatment and I don't know where to find it or something newest on available. So I sent my request to you and actually you're looking for the best treatment, right?
So similarly to Galia, what I'm going to say is just go on our website and
yeah, sure.
3 steps, you're going to find out how it works. It's super easy. I mean, that's how we build it to be super easy. You literally, if you have any condition or your mom, your dad, your family, friends, you type in the condition. All the indications are out there. We work with governmental clinical trial registries. So the moment you type in, we actually see your location. You type in the indication. You type in some other specifics, if you want to, obviously, and then we go and research all of these different registers for clinical trials, and we give you the numbers of clinical trials and actually the exact clinical trials. The moment you get more interested in a clinical trial, usually the top results are more relevant for you. So you just click there, you see more details, and then the final step is apply to find out more information. The moment you apply for getting more information, we as a team connect you with the hospital that's running the clinical trial to start to start communication with the doctor there, to really understand what's involved there, is it really good for you, etc. This information can be also shared with your physician in case you want to share that and discuss with your physician, because we think that they are the best partner in such a discussion.
Yeah, that's really important what you said, because actually the general perception is like clinical trial is dangerous.
Well, that's because media, like my feeling is that media is always looking for the negative news. And I'm so glad that COVID-19 happened, not because it felt like our business or me, myself in any way. And not because I'm not afraid, because I have like my relatives that are really in the risk group. So I'm afraid. But COVID-19 did one of the biggest things that it happened, the best things, is that people for the first time found out that research is the only way to solution. We're always looking in the news, listening to the new vaccines and drug development.
Yeah.
How do you think does this happen? How do you think? Clinical trials. And everyone knows now that research is not the bad cop, but actually is the good cop. And the regulators makes it possible for patients to actually have alternatives.
Thank you so much.